Hello and welcome to Talkable Tips. These are quick videos for busy parents. So today we're talking all about tantrums, and tantrums are just a normal part of child development, but that doesn't make them easy. So today we're going to talk all about what tantrums are, what your child is trying to tell you in those situations, 6 simple ways that you can reduce tantrums from today, and also stick around to the very end because I'm going to give you a step-by-step way that's evidence-based so you know how to respond every single time. Let's get started. Okay, so why do tantrums actually happen? Why do they need to be a thing? Well, just like so many other aspects of your toddler or child's behavior, what they are doing in a tantrum is trying to communicate something to you. In these moments, your child is completely overwhelmed by an emotion. And sure, it's definitely not the best way to communicate with you, but it's all they can manage in that moment. Tantrums often start emerging at around 18 months to 2 years. And this is because this is a time in your child's development where they're wanting to be more independent, but their communication skills are still not quite what they need them to be. They often are trying to do things for themselves that they're not quite physically able to do yet. So things like zipping up their own jacket or doing their car seat buckle all by themselves. Even activities like blowing bubbles can be really tricky for toddlers. And unfortunately, tantrums don't just stop after your child goes through these toddler years. What you'll find is that you're actually continuing to support your child's ability to learn how to regulate their own emotions right through their childhood into their adolescence. So the things you learn today are going to help you through all those parts of your journey together. Okay, so what exactly is your little one experiencing at the moment they're having a tantrum? Well, at this point, in your child's brain, the emotional control center has just taken over. So they have no ability to really reason through what they're doing, and they're a little bit out of control. And what you will find is it is very, very difficult to reason or negotiate with them in these moments because their thinking brain is not yet developed enough to stop their emotional brain from taking over and listen to what you're saying. And when their emotional brain takes over and they go into this heightened emotional state, it's actually what we call fight or flight. And so their body is actually producing cortisol, which is giving forth these feelings to rage and be out of control and really emotional. Now, it's actually not a bad thing that your child is behaving in this way, although it can be really tricky. It's a way that their body can physically process some of those stress hormones, like cortisol, and move through that emotion and that feeling and get through to the other side. And while you'll feel quite emotionally shattered from supporting them through this big emotional outburst, they'll be able to move through it quite quickly because they're processing this cortisol and they're letting their body do what it needs to do. And almost they can move through it to a point where they forget pretty quickly just how out of control they were just only moments ago. So what do tantrums actually mean? Well, firstly, they do not mean that you are a bad parent. So next time this tantrum happens in the middle of the supermarket, I want you to repeat that mantra to yourself. I am not a bad parent. Tantrums are a way for your toddler or your child or your little one to communicate something to you. So tantrums equal communication. And they're trying to communicate something like, hey, I'm not finished yet. Or, that's not fair. Or even, I am so tired and overwhelmed and there is just too much going on right now. And our role as the adult in the situation is to be bigger, wiser, stronger, but always, always kind. If you want to know a bit more about that idea, check out the links below to Circle of Security program, which is a great way to really help you understand what's going on for your child and how you as the adult can be supporting them through these big emotions. All right, well, let's get to it. What are the 6 ways that you can help reduce tantrums as of today? Well, the first one is to be really aware of your toddler's emotional state or state of mind. And this is a bit like being a mind reader, but you will get to know your little one super well. If your toddler is tired, if they're hungry, or if they're unwell, then their ability to manage their emotions is even less than normal. And tip number 2 is to avoid situations where tantrums might happen. So that might be if you are going to the shop when your child is really tired or hungry, rethinking your plan. Do I need to be doing this right now? Could I do online shopping? Could we do it after we've had a snack and a rest? Avoiding tasks that you know are a bit hard for your child, especially when they're tired, because they can cause tantrums too. Tip number 3 is to give warnings when things are going to end. So leaving the park can be really hard for a lot of toddlers. How can you give some warnings that it's time to go? On the swings, perhaps, you could say 5 more, and at the end of those 5 swings, it's time to go home. It can also help your child if they have a transition object. So if you're at the park, you might say, let's choose a leaf to take home with us, or a rock, or what are we going to do when we get home? Let's play with the trains. Tip number 4 is to give your toddler choice and control wherever you can. And it might be as simple as letting them climb into the stroller when it's time to head home from the park, or giving them a choice of which bath toys they want to play with or which pair of shoes they want to wear. Tip number 5 is to reduce frustration where you can. So we know that a toddler's fine motor skills, that's how they use their fingers, is still developing. So avoiding tricky fastenings on their clothes, and also making sure all their toys are appropriate for their age. And tip number 6 is to be aware of those early signs that a tantrum may be coming on, and to intercept or redirect or support your child where you can. So maybe they're doing an activity, they're getting a little frustrated. You can help them, jump in and say, oh, that's looking pretty hard. Let me help. So you can try all those strategies, and there will still be instances, often in very, very public places, where your little one is going to have a tantrum. And that's okay. I am going to step you through now exactly what to do in every single situation a tantrum occurs. And this is important because it helps you be consistent, and it helps your little one learn how to move through these big emotions with your support. Okay, firstly, you as the adult need to take a big breath. Not only is your little one's emotional center in their brain taking over, it will trigger the same response in you. But being the adult, we are lucky enough to have had the experience to learn how to regulate our own emotions, although it can be tricky. And so it's just being conscious of how you're feeling. Take that breath. Take a moment, because you need to respond in a calm way. It's also important to remember that you can't control their behavior, but you can keep them and others safe. And in these moments, it's also really important to remember that your toddler is not doing this to torture you, that they are out of control, and that they need your help. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to stay with them, and you're going to acknowledge how they're feeling. And you're going to give them the words that they don't have at the moment to describe their feelings. And this is called co-regulation, or time in. So you might say something like, oh, I know you really, really want that toy, but we can't have that. We've got a doggy at home, and you can play with it when we get home. The next thing to remember is that it's really important to be consistent and to follow through with what you say. So if they can't have the toy, then they really can't have the toy. And you can still be kind about this, but you need to be consistent. Because what they learn is if you're inconsistent, sometimes if I tantrum, and if I tantrum enough, I do get the thing that I want. And we don't want to be rewarding the tantrum. We want to be helping them through it. And then you're going to stay with them until they have calmed down, until they've worked through all that emotional energy and they're back in a calm state. Now, let's be real. I want you to know that this is really, really hard, and probably the hardest part of being a parent, because you love this little thing, but they are tormenting you in these moments. So always be kind to yourself, and remember, Tantrums do not mean that you are a bad parent. When you're helping your toddler co-regulate and you're helping them manage their emotions, it's exhausting because you are taking on those emotions yourself. So make sure you give yourself a break. Make sure you're sharing the load and reach out to other parents who are going through the same thing. It really helps to know that you're not alone and that every single person who has raised a child has gone through this phase, and this too shall pass. If your little one is really struggling with tantrums and their language development is a bit behind what you're expecting it to be, you might like to check out my video, which is all about language development at 2 years, and I will link to it for you right here. If you found this video helpful, I'm sure you'll want to check out what's coming next. Now, most of you who are watching my videos haven't yet subscribed, so just take a moment now to subscribe to the channel with notifications on. For more ways to support your baby or toddler's language development, check out my online course. The first 100 families who register with the code TANTRUM20 will receive 20% off the program. The links for that are in the description below. See you next time.